Hello viewers, I am Varun Jain and I welcome you all to the inaugural panel discussion of ET Retail Business Leadership Summit. The topic of this panel discussion is getting business back to normal. The retail sector has been one of the hardest hit sectors by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Things were completely shut during the initial months of the lockdown before retailers were allowed to gradually restore operations in a phased manner. But again, local lockdowns made things difficult for the retailers, hampering the recovery process. According to some industry reports, the growth is slowly coming back for the businesses on the back of relaxed lockdowns and increased consumer confidence. We are joined by eminent leaders from the retail sectors to talk more on this. Please join me in welcoming Mr. J. Suresh, Managing Director and CEO of Urban Fashions, Mr. Rishi Vasudev, CEO of Lifestyle and Home Center, Mr. Adib Ahmed, Managing Director, Lulu Financial Group, 2014 Holdings and Tables, Ms. Kavita Rao, Country Commercial Manager at IKEA India, Mr. Ramesh Narsamhan, CEO of Ingenico ePayments India, and Mr. Sachin Jain, Managing Director of DBS India. Thank you very much for being a part of this panel discussion. And I'll start with a very pertinent question. This question is for all the panelists. It's been 6 months into the pandemic. We have seen that how businesses were impacted initially. Wanted to understand from each one of you as in, where are we now? How are things looking going ahead? So we'll start with Rishi and we'll keep the discussion rolling after that. So Rishi, over to you.
Thank you, Varun. I think the good news is that it's getting better week on week from a complete lockdown mid-March and April and into May. I think business started slowly. We saw more recovery in high streets and in smaller towns. People in metros and malls were the last to come back. But then the good news is that as we progressed through the months of July and August, we have been slightly better than the projections that we had kept for those 2 months. And now we are closely tracking the festive season, and we are looking at how 45 days before Durga Puja and Dussehra was last year and how it is trending now. And I should say things are getting better every week.
And Mr. Suresh, you are one of the biggest fashion players in the country. What is your assessment of the situation, sir? And how are things looking?
I would like to echo what Rishi said. I think definitely things have been improving, but I think our expectations also have come down. When we say improvement, we were year on year we were growing at around 15-20%. Now if you're reaching around 60 to 70% of that level, we feel I think it's good. I think that's the place we have reached because we started with zero. The current financial year, April and then May, slowly it started. And really it started moving from the month of June. And if you see from the month of June, I think markets also opened up quite sequentially. It was not that all the markets were open on day one. I would say that the Chennai was the last bastion which opened in mid-August. I think post that probably we are reaching definitely more than 50 to 60% depending on where you are located. If you are in small towns, we are more towards 70 to 80%. In large towns, we are more towards 50 to 60% kind of sale level is what we have reached. But as I think Rishi said, I think festival seems to be starting quite well. Because we actually the last weekend, typically Gandhi Jayanti Day starts the festival buying, although the festival this year is a bit delayed. But it's been decently, the uptake has been quite decent if you really look at last 3 days point of view, which I think augurs well for the future. So it's a definite improvement, but we are very, very far away from what we should have been, without pandemic.
And Adib, coming to you, you have interests in fashion, food and beverage and specialty retail through your company Tables. How has been the situation for you and how are things looking in the UAE and India?
I think so. The pandemic has been similar across the world, across boundaries, across markets and across sectors. While some sectors has been hit severely, other sectors were given a chance to stay afloat, So in this matter, I would say that, I echo what Mr. Suresh and Mr. Rishi had said. It took us all by a big surprise. And, we were asked to reboot it to a ground zero level, post which we saw a slow pickup as months started to open up and markets started to open up. And last month was much better than the previous months. And of course, we currently seeing only close to a 50% pre-COVID levels, even at this point of time. And I think so going months, we would hope to get back into a pre-COVID level at some point of time. But that doesn't seem to be where the market is heading towards. Of course, the cases have still not dropped. And, there's been a second wave that is coming up. There have been markets that are going back onto a closing off scenario. The world market also is not helping. So many factors around the world is not helping, predominantly from a logistics setup, supply chain management, and so on and so forth. It's been quite a strain on the entire line of businesses so far. I think so. On a positive note, where I could say is to the factor that, because of these forced shutdown, it gave people like us and of course the ground decision makers time to really step back and really have an introspective analysis of the business and really understand what we were doing right and what we were not focusing on, and what if focused could have brought in better results. I think so that was something that was forced upon all of us, but I think so that time was well spent on most of us has spent that time well on looking into our business and saying that, see, this on a long term is not going to make any difference. So should we continue with this, or, should we close off? And I think so everybody has used the pandemic in a scenario to do that on their line of business and start to recreate a new strategy that sounded very different from what a pre-COVID scenario would look like, So I think so. That's been a very positive note on this COVID scenario. And of course, it all came at a large price and a huge cost. We're trying to still absorb that in all the businesses that we are handling.
And coming to Kavita, how are things looking for IKEA? How has been the last 6 months, and where's the silver lining now?
Thanks, Varun. I would say in general, I would agree to what the other panelists have said. I think it's been a biggest blow in terms of growth, and growth is very fundamental in the retail context. And then if you look at the retail industry, we can very clearly see that physical retailing has been adversely impacted. It's almost like the larger the size of the retail format, the greater the impact of not having visitation. Right? At the same time, we can very clearly see that online retailing has gained in a big way. But it's also important to note that for those of us that are omni-channel retailers, while online can compensate to an extent the loss of sale in physical formats, maybe it never can compensate in its entirety, right? In general, what we have seen for most online retailers is that maybe e-commerce contributes to about 8 to 13% of the sales turnover. And then even a 3x or 4x growth in e-commerce alone cannot substitute the loss when it comes to physical retailing. So of course, and then when we start to look at the category, we also see that where it is a high involvement purchase, the need for touch and feel, retail has been heavily impacted. And then as a home furnishing retailer for us as IKEA, one positive development is the fact that all of us have spent so much time at home. And so the home has become center stage, and we can see that the needs related to the home have become very, very predominant. So that is a very interesting positive trend that we are seeing in the market in the post-COVID world as well.
And such a new, your company is one of the biggest diamond exporters and retailers. And as there have been a lot of job losses and people have been very conservative about spending because of the uncertain times, how has it impacted your business? And are things looking up for you?
Thank you, Arun. Thanks for asking that question. And I think broadly, I would agree to my co-panelists in the spirit of what was shared, and things are reviving. Interestingly, in the diamond business, the revival was actually rather quick in the beginning. And then to complement to what Rishi was mentioning, we saw majority growth coming in, tier 2, tier 3 markets. The tier 1 markets took much longer. In the Indian business, we worked with about 150 retailers across the country. And a few things we saw. we saw that organized chain players, and pretty much what Kavita you just mentioned, organized chain players in large format stores were the last ones to pick up. You know, independent stores which which have a long legacy did pick up much faster. But I think one thing that I clearly see, because again we work in multiple cities and markets, I think enterprise and going out to the consumers, keeping in mind what's happening with the consumer today, is giving the results. And I think, and you can clearly see some people are doing very well, some people not because of this reason. But it's a very strong comeback, Varun, at the fundamental of it. We are very positive about the last quarter of 2020. And there is, I think there's an inherent need amongst the consumers to feel joyful. And I'm not saying that, people are not impacted by it, the cases are going up, but there's general need to get out of it. There's need to express love. There's need for meaningful things that matter. Perhaps less is more. And I think if we understand all of these things and package our whole product, I think any industry will perhaps be doing well.
And coming to Ramesh, you help retailers with technologies that can help them stay ahead in the curve. What is your assessment of the situation, and what kind of technologies you are working on to help retailers come out of this situation?
Sure, Varun. And taking off from where Sachin left, experiencing love, I think we need to count our blessings in the industry that we work in. Frankly, COVID and the lockdown have had an opposite effect, because we take care of digital payments. We are in the digital payments industry. We were always a 24/7 industry, very heavily into technology. I still recall, sitting with my, tech leaders on 15th of March, saying, how can Mumbai ever shut down its local trains, right? It won't happen, right? And it actually happened. But before that, we got our infrastructure to the employees' homes so that we could, get our, BCP going, our business continuity going. We've always done these plans, but not to this scale. But we did get it going because I think we provided a lifeline during the lockdown to many businesses, including Kavita's or Rishi's business, where we provided the ability to transact using digital payments. And if you see some of the figures now, it's been reported that digital payments saw a 42% jump since the lockdown, right? And in August alone, UPI has exceeded 1.5 billion transactions, which means that thanks to the lockdown, thanks to the fact that you couldn't go out, people started, using digital payments more aggressively because there's really no choice left. And we saw payments growing during the lockdown itself. There was obviously when e-commerce shut down and stores shut down, obviously there is a gap, but it's not to the extent that whether Kavita or Rishi or the others on the panel, Rishi or Suresh, have experienced for us. Because right through the lockdown, you still had to pay your utility bills. Some of us had to pay school and college bills, right? Tuition fees. And, you had some parts of the economy still working. And the fact is that people being at home, gaming and entertainment also saw a very, very significant increase, right? So that's something that helped us through. But, moment the lockdown, came to an end, the harsh or the stringent lockdown, if I can put it that way, came to an end in the month of June. We saw an upsurge of transactions from e-commerce initially, and now from across the board, we are seeing a lot of digital transactions happening, and including now that schools and colleges have opened, even though classes are online. That contributes school fees. I mean, we all have to pay school fees for our kids, and so a lot of avenues have opened up for us from a digital payments. So there are two parts to our payments. We do online and we do recurring payments. Online payments have really, gone back to pre-COVID levels. No two ways about it. It's in the recurring payments where essentially we help the NBFCs collect their monthly EMI from customers, or even the SIPs. The monthly EMIs have been impacted mainly by the government help that you could have a moratorium on interest payments. Or EMIs for about 5 or 6 months. But other than that, we see digital payments really coming back to normal. And like the incident of or the event of demonetization, it seems that the government's objectives of increasing the use of digital payments and reducing the use of cash, that certainly COVID-19 has given a huge boost to that objective, which ensures that all of us benefit from the same, right?
Great.
So that's the scene from the digital payment. So as I said, in the light of all the other speakers on the panel, we really have to count our blessings because our business has actually gone up. And I'm not saying that in a mocking sense, but more about saying that there are some people who have benefited, most people have not benefited. So keep the the impact of the disease on lives, the impact on livelihoods. This part of the industry has gone up.
And as Kavita said in her initial remarks, that e-commerce has benefited from this situation while physical stores had to suffer more. I wanted to understand from any of the panelists, as in going ahead, since people are more comfortable at this point of time buying from e-commerce channel, and we all have our e-commerce presence, will the focus be more on strengthening our e-commerce channel rather than opening or expanding the physical stores at this point of time going ahead? Will it in any ways impact this equation between online and offline for us? Any of the panelists can take this question.
I will start, Varun. I think, it's going to definitely, change the equation because, of course, e-commerce was growing even earlier. But what I think this pandemic has done is probably this 5 years, it has fast forward the e-commerce growth by 5 years. So I think, we have to keep that in mind because if you really look at it before the pandemic, in our case, we used to do almost 15% of our business in e-commerce. That, of course, on a shrunk base has moved now towards 50. But I believe that, once I think things get back to normal and so some amount of normalcy returns, probably we'll end up at around 25 to 35, anywhere, So it's definitely going to be more than 15 and it's going to be much more than 15. So when you have a situation like this, definitely you need to evaluate and you need to have a right balance in terms of opening stores. And also I think going forward, e-commerce in a way will also guide opening of the stores because we find demand coming up from some say hinterland. And we realize that, our brand is getting popular there because of e-commerce. Probably there is an opportunity for us to put a store in that place. So I think it's going to be a balanced, we need to really balance the physical store growth. It won't be like, any mall you open, any mall opens, you put up a store automatically, or, you say that, any high street, showing some promise, you put up a store automatically, those kind of equations, I think will change. Definitely, I think focus will be more and more towards e-commerce and then provide, a little bit of a balance through the physical stores. So that is the way, we are looking at it. Maybe 35% of our business coming from e-commerce and 65 coming from brick and mortar across different channels.
And Rishi, you agree with what Mr. Suresh said, and how do you look at things?
I agree with Suresh. I can also throw a little light on it, having spent the last 5 years of my my working life on the other side. So as I used to say from that side, and I see it having come to offline now, that for long e-commerce, online and offline have been working like two separate tracks, right? So we believe online meant discovery online, shopping online, and there was a certain purpose that online players were driving in terms of getting more customers on board, driving growth at the cost of bottom line or experience. So that's where online was headed. And to a large extent, offline was trying to insulate itself, right? So most brands would use online to liquidate inventory, or malls would not allow presence of online players as they saw them as competition. And I used to always wonder that why are people treating them as two different channels? Whereas if you look at from the consumer point of view, he doesn't differentiate so much. He would be, for example, browsing on one channel, buying on another channel, expecting some delivery services from the store, some payment options, all of that. And then he moves very easily from one platform to another. However, in our minds, we were securing ourselves, and somehow it had reached a point where there was some bit of equilibrium, right, where things were moving a little bit. And even some of the online players were kind of trying to push the envelope to get faster growth. The growths were starting to become more normal than abnormal as it was maybe 2 years back. come pandemic, and then we all say that, online has come back very strongly and offline is struggling. But if you go a little deeper into the data, and I'm talking about fashion retail, online always had a presence of about 6% penetration. Now, when 94% of the market was closed, the best online could do was come back to pre-COVID levels, right? Whereas if I was on the other side, I would think that if 94% is closed, why the 6% should come back to 6% and not come back to 8, 9%, 10% quickly, right? What consumers are saying that there are certain things they prefer to buy online. There are certain things they would like to go to the store, experience it, as Kavita was mentioning, and really then take a call. And like a lot of especially the local Kirana stores have shown us that, how you understand the consumer, how do you give him options to browse online, shop offline, get delivery online, is the new normal that will come in, right? So I don't see going forward, we'll be able to very clearly segregate saying so much of my business comes from online and so much comes from offline. It's going to be a mix of many things, right? That people coming to the store, browsing and then stepping out and then shopping, or people asking you to send stuff to their house to really select and then giving it back. There could be trials at home. We are seeing many new trends during this pandemic as we try to reach out to customers through WhatsApp shopping, video-based shopping, and consumers were lapping up a lot of these things which we never thought was possible. So net, what I'm trying to say is that a consumer's behavior has definitely moved forward based on COVID. Maybe 3-4 years of effort that would have been needed to make him more aware of both channels has happened because he or she was not able to step out and go to the stores. However, success in the future is not expecting X will win over Y. The success in the future is going to be how we imagine both together and how we leverage. The pure online players really need to work with offline players to ensure that they give a seamless experience. Similarly, the offline players need to, including the malls, retailers, brands, need to find a way where they need to work closely with the online players so that the consumer gets what they want, so that it's not either or, it's an integrated approach. And I do hope that in 3 years, we will not be able to segregate online and offline sales and say that, okay, the various ways I have of reaching out to the customer drives my business growth in a certain way. I think that's going to be the difference. And that is the silver lining from COVID. What it has taught a lot of people on both sides is to work together and work with consumer in the center of it.
Adib, you want to come into this discussion?
I think so. Rishi has said everything. There's hardly anything left for me to say. But all I could add on into the factor is that at Tables, we had always thought about an omni-channel from 2015 onwards as a strategy. We have maintained that thing. Our aim was to achieve a 30% online sales on across the brands that we operate in the market. But as Rishi said, see, at the best, we were doing a larger single-digit number on e-commerce on our own platforms. And as the lockdown happened, we were thinking that single-digit numbers would start to shoot up and you would see a larger uptake on that one. But that was not the case. There was a very slow increase on the online space for us on the e-commerce site. Of course, there was other players that were doing good, and third-party e-commerce players are also picking up for us. But once the lockdown started to slow down and we saw the stores started to open up, the pickup pace on the brick and mortar stores was much more faster than the e-commerce sites, which pretty much shows us that the consumer still wants to have that interaction with us, wants to be part of the store story. And to the element is that they would like to come, see, experience, buy, find the value of the products that they're going to buy, and then they enjoy that customer experience. Now, the biggest challenge for us at Tables is how do you replicate that customer interface and that experience element when we go thoroughly onto the digital space, using of AI, using of many such technologies to predominantly to give a very seamless consumer experience on a digital platform. has always been the million-dollar question for us, and we feel that we're still in the infancy on that one. There's a lot of areas that we have to achieve on. But as an organization, as a group, we also run malls in the country on a larger spectrum. We have the hypermarket division that was, we're still a strong believer of the brick and mortar format. So many of our other divisions are still developing sites in India that we would be opening up in years to come. So I think so that the brick and mortar is definitely here to stay, but the omni-channel is something that cannot be ignored. Has to be created, a seamless experience has to be created between the brick and mortar and the online space as well.
Maybe Varun, if you allow me to add a different perspective on on luxury products and high-end products, very complementary to what is just discussed by my co-panelists. But interestingly, the high-end, and I'll define high-end as we consider over $25,000 of average sale. I mean, that grew dramatically. I mean, over the last 6 months, we've seen dramatic sales in that area, which haven't been so much e-commerce led. But what's changed fundamentally is that in a country like ours, all of us, I mean, immaterial of which geography we come from, which economic strata we come from, we all have a family doctor and we all have a family jeweler. Yeah. And the whole, that fundamental is evolved. And we have a brand called Forever, which brings in absolute transparency in the business. And, as Rishi mentioned about the acceleration that COVID has done. And I can tell you that the acceleration on a very traditional consumption where you want to meet the retailer, you want to be sure that if I'm investing in it, the value stays on. I think the whole narrative has moved to transparency. I mean, immensely. Post-COVID world, we see that the average time, average consumer who's physically walking into the store has studied a category 17 times minimum on different platforms online, and finally he or she is making a decision. And lastly, which Abid just mentioned, is that whole acceptance and usage of virtual reality, augmented reality, AI in search. I think all these things are a way of life. And the way I see with 5G coming in, the impact that I'm just from an experience point of view of the product. And e-commerce is of course, going to go in its own space, perhaps in our industry, slower than the others. But the whole experience on what augmented reality and virtual reality will do is consumers, experiencing your products in their home place, already knowing about the category before they walk into the physical space.
Also, my next question to the panelist is about the strategies that we have, inculcated in our processes to keep afloat. We know about IKEA that they have slashed their prices of the products by up to 30%. So Kavita, my question is to you basically to begin with, as in what are the strategies that we are looking at, keeping this pandemic in mind and keeping consumer behavior in mind?
Sure, Varun. I think there are two important trends for us to look at, and both of them come from what is happening in terms of consumer behavior. There are many different changes that have happened in the last 6-7 months, but two things that really stand out. One is digital adoption, and all of us just discussed about it a few minutes ago. What is interesting to see is the consumer was definitely thinking omni-channel. For retailers, what is very important to look at is what does the customer journey look like, right? The customer, even pre-COVID, was maybe starting online, right? If you wanted to buy a sofa, for example, the first point was to maybe type it on Google and look at what options came about, right? What has really changed on the digital adoption front is that maybe people are now willing to commit, which maybe they were not able to do earlier on. They wanted the physical touch and feel, right? So that's one important trend. The second important trend I would like to call out is the whole element of conscious spending. People have become more mindful, and we will see this even more, at least this is our prediction, that as the economic crisis begins to play out, it is going to be very important to offer affordable products, affordable services to the consumers, because that is going to be the need for consumers in the market, right? We can already see that people are very mindful of where they spend money. Discretionary purchases are definitely under the scanner. Do we need it? Do we not need it? And then you can also see that the purchase process itself has become far more planned, right? And there is lesser impulse maybe. And Indian consumer always looked for value for money, but it is also taking that value for money into a whole new dimension that we expect to happen in the future, right? There's going to be a lot more research. So two things that we definitely see is when we look at digital adoption, one of the most important strategies is, of course, there were always digital natives who've been shopping online, but 25% of customers coming online for the first time means that people are starting to shop online for the first time. And then they need a completely different kind of support to be able to commit. And then when we look at a category like home furnishing, it is important to acknowledge that the understanding of home furnishing is very diverse across our customer segments, right? There are people who get it very well, and there are people who are just starting off and maybe don't know what it takes to create a solution, maybe for a living room together. It is not just about placing the sofa in the living room, but maybe there is much more to it than placing the sofa there, right? So one important thing that we've really tried to do is how do we handhold and support the customers in the journey? Right. So when we have offered a service like Click and Collect, the idea is, we do a portion of the work to get it to a location, and then you do a portion of the work, but in the process, you're serving money. That is a great statement when it comes to affordability. The second important thing is when we look at people wanting to shop home furnishing and they're not sure, we have supported people with elements like personal shopping, right? So you can call up and fix an appointment, and you can get consultancy in terms of how should I, put together a solution. So that has been a huge help. It's been much appreciated by customers. And then we also see that when it comes to the larger value purchases, people are still, buying homes or bought homes in the past that they want to furnish. So you want to set up a wardrobe, you want to set up a kitchen, and it is a completely different skill set. So we are also looking at how can we support customers with remote planning services and so on. So what we are seeing is an array of services related to digital adoption that can support both first-time online shoppers as well as the digital natives. And then, as you said, on the affordability picture, I think this is very, very important. We have, of course, looked at this concept of new lower price, which will be a huge help for customers in terms of seeing that there is a permanent decrease in price and it's not a temporary discount that we're talking about. And it has been possible because of the volumes that we've managed to generate with regard to some specific categories of families within the larger home furnishing space. And then what is also important is it is not just the price of a particular product. If you want to refresh your living room, you don't always need to change the sofa. You could change the cushion covers or the curtains or put in a new decoration, and that can give a complete facelift to your living room. And being able to put together these solutions is also important. So one of the areas that we are looking at is how do we create affordable solutions and not just affordable products, right? And how can we give customers the opportunity to do something that is easy change? So these are some areas where we are evolving strategies, and you will see a lot more of it through the rest of this year and next year as well.
Mr. Suresh, what has been the tweak and strategies that you have managed during this lockdown and during these pandemic crisis, and how are you making sure that brands do well and come out of this pandemic strongly?
Varun, I must say that, we looked at the entire value chain. So it's not a change of strategy of one part of the business. Because it's not, I think the way we look at it, I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for legacy organizations. Because legacy organizations, you are typically tied up with multiple assets, which actually makes you to run the business in a certain manner. I think this gave us an opportunity to completely look at our value chain. And of course, starting with the consumer. Because the entire retail is run on the premise that you make the customer spend more time at the store and then they will buy more. Actually, we are now looking at, how do I make the customer spend the least amount of time so that they feel safe about shopping. But at the same time, how do I make them spend more? So we need to completely change the way we are engaging with the customers. How do we engage with the customers much before, engage with the customers to think about our brand on our store, much before they reach the store. So then you completely change the way you are running your retail. Some of the things my co-panelist mentioned, it's about how do I empower my own sales team at the store to converse with the customers through a social media angle. How do I empower the customers to provide recommendation to their regular customers so that they can actually do a home delivery and then also converse and then provide that, in-store experience to the customer at home. So the entire way we engage with the customers has to change. Now with this multiple channels emerging in terms of online and offline, you also cannot have inventory everywhere. So how do I make one view of inventory available to the customers, whether it's our own website, whether it's a third-party website, what is available in the store, how do I make customer to shop a store? So there are multiple things we need to do to make sure that there is a one view of the inventory. And similar to one view of inventory, we should have one view of customer as well. Because now customer is actually shopping in multiple or browsing in multiple channels, buying in some other channel. So how do I get a complete view of the customer so that we are able to reach out to the customer in an appropriate manner? So reaching out to the customer in an appropriate manner again is changing. So it's no longer the day and age of a mass media advertising. It's all about very personalized communication. So that part, again, how do we reach our consumer is again a tweak in strategy. So this is all about the front end. But I think we should also look at our back end. If you really look at a fashion business, which used to operate on a cycle of almost 6 to 9 months, you plan 9 months in advance, you buy 6 months before and wait for 6 months to know whether the consumer is buying or not. I think those things have to change. You are now today in a very fast turnaround kind of a situation where you are able to pick up the trends, given the work from home being one of the key trends. What are the products which are going to sell? How do I deprioritize products which are not going to sell with WFH and prioritize on products or create new products which are suitable for work from home? So the product strategy has to change. So it's a complete, gamut of change in strategy, which I think in a way has made the organization much more agile and much more lean and maybe, much better prepared for the future than what we were, pre-pandemic.
And Ramesh, my question to you is, how are things changing in the e-payment space? What kind of requirements you have seen from the retailers, over the course of these last 6 months to help them out to create a good customer experience and new strategies that you have to look into?
Sure, Varun. And I think, I'll talk about what all the other panelists have talked about, which is essentially whether you're brick and mortar or you're an online company. I think digitization is key. I think in all the companies had embarked on this a few years ago. It's just that they have hastened it very quickly, especially digitization of the customer channels, in the front end. And of course, there's a lot of digitization in the supply chains also, which is just coming in. And I think my co-panelists are probably much better equipped to talk about it. But let me give you a couple of examples, right? And this is very certainly India, and we're all used to this experience, right? I mean, historically, a lot of insurance business happens in Jan, Feb, and March in India because it's linked to some kind of tax saving. And what happened was that on 2nd April, we got a call from one of our insurance customers, the head of persistency, saying that, look, we've hardly been able to collect any insurance renewal premium. Reason is, it's a very Indian thing to send somebody to your house or to your office. Somebody will come and the insurance person will call and say, please give your check. I will collect it, and you go back and you deposit it, and the insurance renewal is done. Now this year it didn't happen because we shut down around March 23rd, right? And there was no collection possible. Now what we did at that time is we have a product called LinkPay, which essentially means that the insurance company can send an SMS to you, and then you click on the link and it takes you to a payment gateway page where you can use any mode, cards, net banking, wallets to pay for your insurance, right? So this is one classic example which we saw an application of digitization to a customer channel of a large insurance company. And true enough, we realized the potential of it. And by 5th of April, we launched a marketing campaign to all other insurance companies and others. And by June, we had 100 companies signing up for this product, because it is a reality of life that now no longer will somebody come and collect a check from you, because you're not allowed to. And second, it's also a very expensive way of collecting a check. The cost of such a collection is almost easily 100 and 150 rupees in metros, and probably much higher in the hinterland. So that's one example, right? Now, we are also working with a very large automotive company, for service, after sales service. Typically, either they send a person to pick up the car and drop you back, and then they collect their money when they come and drop the car back. Now, what we are saying is use the link pay. So you really, when the car gets dropped, you send a link pay and click on it and you pay the bill, right? As simple as that. You don't need to have any contact when it comes to payments. It can be contactless payments, and it doesn't take very much for a dealership to get going. It really is not a technology marvel or something. It's fairly simple. It connects to your billing application. Very simple to implement. Couple of hours. No capex, no opex, but it just, and then you're able to use this facility. And if you see, that is exactly what many of the brick and mortar companies have done, right? I mean, they're the ones who've been really, impacted very strongly because they never sold online many a time, most of the time. And if you see the car companies now, I mean, you go and launch, some huge number of new products were launched during the lockdown. And you can actually go to the websites of these automotive companies and experience the car, right? And as Kavita said, people will still want to touch and feel before buying the car. But the fact is, bulk of your research is done by the time. And the car companies and the automotive companies are enabling this. There've been a flurry of new launches. And so you digitize your customer channels. Now, it still takes people to build a car. Let's be realistic about it. You need people to come into factories, car, truck, whatever you may say, or even IKEA's furniture. You need somebody to build it for you, right? I mean, digitization cannot replace those part of the task that you need to do. But matter of fact is that you can do so many of these things. Another example I'll give you, thanks to COVID, diagnostic chains, once they started testing, their business has gone multifold scale up. Now, the easiest way to do this, we approached some of our large diagnostic, and then now we've taken it to the larger number of diagnostic centers. How do you collect your money? Send a link, SMS, you click on it and you pay based on whatever you want to test. It's not just COVID testing. I mean, a lot of us have elderly people at home, mothers, fathers, who have to get their diabetes tested regularly, right? I mean, you can't stop because it's a lockdown. You can't go to a hospital because you're very scared of going to the hospital, right? And most hospitals do not, had not even allowed too many people to come in, assisting the elderly. So just one person could go with them. So considering all this, home-based testing is great, but then how do you enable the payment part of the cycle? You don't have cash. Actually, if you see some of the reports, though now I've read a report that the cash in ATMs has come back to the original pre-COVID state. Nobody went to the ATMs to withdraw cash either during the actual lockdown. So this is probably one of the most effective ways of digitizing your processes, especially the customer channel processes, staying in business and thriving, as far as business is concerned. So a lot of these things have to be implemented by brick and mortar businesses to be able to, convince the customer digitally, and then if required, bring them over to the showroom and make sure that the purchase is finally, happens, especially the large value ones like a car or a large appliance or maybe even large furniture, as Kavita put it. So these are some of the things that companies have to do to as a strategy to thrive in the new world. And it's not very new. It's not because of the lockdown. I think Indian companies have been talking about digitization for the past 2-3 years. Adoption of cloud technologies, digitization, mobile app, the whole works. And it's just about making sure that somewhere every company becomes a bit of a software company, if I can put it that way, and you adopt some of these new processes, ensure that you're able to give a customer experience so good that the customer then comes over to the brick and mortar part of your business to actually place the order and collect the goods. So that's how I see the impact of digitization, and the fact that we as a payments company can bring in the value when you want to digitize the payment and collections. We can bring in an enormous amount of value so that it's like business as usual.
Now coming to Rishi, I wanted to understand about the consumer behavior that we are seeing now, and also are customers looking for more value out of the products now as compared to earlier? Maybe are we looking at lowering the prices of products or creating products that will offer more value? How are things looking in the home furnishing part as well as the department?
I'll start with the home business. I think home business has seen a very strong comeback, and we believe the coming quarter will be almost equal to last quarter, the same quarter last year. So that way, as people are spending more time home, and we have a very strong format in home center, we are seeing that really doing well, and people coming back and buying more. So unlike being more value driven, I think the strength of the products, the strength of the pricing that you offer and the range, I think has helped us sustain what we had. And unlike previous years, this year we didn't have to go in for end of season sale. And we saw that, the people were buying more despite, or the comeback was stronger in this chain despite not having a like for like end of season sale as we had last year, right? So I think we are not seeing people really wanting more value in terms of reduction in price, but I think people are, if the brand is strong and it has been built on certain fundamental pricing for a certain set of customers, we are seeing that that's holding on. On the lifestyle business, where we are largely a brand player, where we represent all the brands, including the brands some of the other panelists, Suresh sells. So we really thrive on selling all the brands and offering a customer a value in terms of the offering that we bring in terms of curation. Again, here, this time we actually delayed the launch of end of season sale because we are seeing that people had high intent. So when the lockdown ended and people started to come back, there was pent up demand. So you could see that there was more of demand for products which were more basic in nature, more work from home. But as we move forward, that's not what has sustained, because that once people filled up their wardrobes, I think now they're going for more fashion products. People said this is the end of bottom wear and people will wear more shorts because they're working from home. But we see that even categories like denims, etc., are coming back. And between brands as well as private labels that we have in the store, we don't see a dramatic shift, which means that the customer who was buying brands continues to buy brands. It's not that because of COVID, he has moved in and started to buy more value offerings or lowered his price segment. So currently we don't see. However, rather than prices going down, we believe that brands will have to add much more value to the product. So we have already seen launches. We launched a range which is anti-viral, protects, it gives some sort of protection against virus, launched by many brands. So I think concepts like this, where people are adding more value, brands are adding more value to those price points, are working. Obviously, a lot of this could change. Currently, we have very high intent customers coming to the store. We don't have casual walk-ins where people are just looking around and converting if they like something on impulse. People who have decided to buy are venturing out. They are spending, the conversions are better, the basket size is better, and we don't see any pressure on the MRPs as of now. So that's the trend which is there. And as long as brands keep track of how consumer is evolving and are either correcting prices or adding more value to the products going forward, I think we should be okay in terms of holding on to the prices. That's how I see it.
And Sachin, do you see any need to tweak your offerings in the Indian market? Do you think that there has been a shift in dynamics where people are not spending that much that they used to spend earlier in the pre-COVID level, or has the spending gone up? How do you look at the situation?
I think what we've noticed is that, again, this perhaps was the most important time that one was able to zoom in as sharply into what segments you're talking. So the high-end luxury consumer is behaving in a very different manner. The mid-price consumer is behaving in a very different manner. The entry-level consumer, who's sort of tipping on from just buying gold products, is behaving in a very different manner. And I think different things are going on. But I think if I were to say what is that one common thread amongst all, it's about owning fewer but better things. People are looking at better quality, and it's not necessarily a discount or a price drop. Of course, in our kind of category, consumers are, the first question is that are the prices going to end? And over the last few months, we've seen a lot of volatility in the gold pricing, which has been, quite fundamental to this conversation. Having said that, different segments, very different strategies. The product itself is changing dramatically. So, if you look at the mid-price area, where, large-scale weddings are out of the picture. I mean, at least for the short run, and how our industry is, services the wedding segment is completely transformed. We've seen, more sort of, all of us in this lockdown, we sort of more are bending towards saying that the woman of the home has done more, and there's a sense of gratitude expression. I think there's not one person I know who realizes the worth of not just things, but relationships that matter. And diamonds play a very fundamental role there. But what's changing is, simplicity. Earlier we used to sell a lot of big pieces with tiny, tiny diamonds. I see solitaire, single diamond products changing in. People are buying for self-consumption more, not necessarily to show the neighbor. So I think there's a lot of, internalization in the category that's happening. And I think we at De Beers believe that our product is really, we get to touch and feel some miracles of Mother Nature. And in this time, there's deep appreciation of nature as well. Things which are real, things that have contributed back to the society. So I think, again, different segments and different strategies are in play.
And Adib, you have a couple of brands in specialty store segment. How are they impacted, and what are the changes in consumer behaviors you are seeing when it comes to your brands and specialty sector?
At Tables, as we are a custodians of many international brands that comes inside, I think so. One of the asks that we had from day one, of course, is there was a stress on the margins everywhere around. I think so. It's a fact that every other brand retailer was facing in the market. There was an ask of having the products made locally so that the price margins could be much betterly improved. I think so. One of the recent shift in government policies and so on and so forth in recent times have only given a lot more push, not just to brand retailers like us, but also to the principals internationally to start focusing on getting the goods made in India. So by, a better margin could be derived, There were many reasons on why this was not done in the past, predominantly because of the entire setup that was here in India. And of course, the large scale volume was not very large to what was happening in the international market, So, but see, India is still in a very infancy stage when it comes to the retailing side of the business, is what my personal view is, And we have miles to go before we could become a large scale market in comparison to other big emerging markets also. Many of the times our comparison is towards China, which I feel is not very right. They've dealt far ahead of us in many areas, and we're still in our infancy stage. So I think so a lot more efficiency has to be built into the logistic and the supply chain side of the product acquisition. And that's the only way that we could start getting margins for each of the retailers to start performing much better and the consumers to find value for the product that they are purchasing. So I think so in this last couple of months, and of course earlier pre-COVID, and with the government initiative to move more in Make in India and so on and so forth, I think so a lot of principals are taking that a very serious note. And I think so that's really helping brand retailers such as us to get more locally sourced products in the market. That's helping it in one way. And then, of course, again, trying to understand where and how we can give more value to our consumer has always been a quest that any retailer like us would go on. And I think so that's been happening. And I think so as each day passes by, we find them that, if you don't keep them internationally updated with the products that we are selling here in this market also, their interest goes off. And of course, with the larger e-commerce players like Amazon and this opening up international markets towards the purchasing of Indian consumers, if it is not available here, they would go and start purchasing it from somewhere outside and get it delivered here and so on and so forth, So up to date in terms of fashion and product mix is also something that would keep us on toes, so to meet the customer demands that are coming on this side, So I think so. If you ask me on a short side, has there been a large scale change in consumer behavior? No, I don't think so. I think so the expectation of the consumers pre-COVID and post-COVID remains, and what Indian consumer wants is value for the money they spend with us.
And coming to Mr. Suresh, I wanted to understand from you, sir, do you think these end of season sales or offering discounts to the consumers at this point of time can really help the fashion industry, or what are your views on that? How to get consumers back shopping for fashion in these trying times?
Today, actually, the consumers, I think as Rishi mentioned, they are coming with a purpose. They are wanting to buy something and there is an occasion for which, they want to buy. Frankly, even whatever end of season discounting we did a couple of months back didn't really, get that kind of a crowd. Maybe, it's time for the industry as well, because end of season discount happens on two things. One, of course, you're driving sales. Second, also, it's a reflection of your own supply chain inefficiency. I think both the things are going to be very different. The way you're going to drive sales is going to be very different. So if you are because the biggest, I would say, the advantage today is, I think we have a direct connect with the customers, much more than any other time, with the Omni and combination of both the information we get out of store as well as the information we get out of online. I think we have a direct now connect with the customer. So we will be able to tweak our strategy to suit the customer on one side, which should actually drive sales more than just the discounting. And on the other side, I think a lot of work has happened in terms of improving the efficiency of our supply chain. I think that's a work, I would say, has been, waiting to happen in the industry. I think this pandemic has given us a big push or a nudge to make it happen. I think combination of these two, I feel that end of season sale will be there. It's not that it won't be there. It will be much shorter, and it will be very, very, focused on getting rid of something which is not really sold. But it is going to be like a, how do I keep on, looking at what is doing well, what is not doing well, and then sort of selling it off even before end of season sale, rather than waiting almost 4 to 5 months and then put everything on sale which is not sold. So I believe that the way end of season sale is going to run in this industry is going to change dramatically.
Wanted to understand from all of the panelists, anyone can take this question. Where would we be focusing more on going ahead, whether it is to improve margins or to increase safety for the consumers? How is the focus or the energy is going to shift in the future for us? And also wanted to understand, are we okay if with increase in price, which comes with these, precautions that we are taking at stores and creating a safer environment for the consumers? So what is your take on that? So anyone of the panelists can take this.
Just take, Varun, an example to the previous point that you made, whether you need to really discount products. Now, there are very interesting use cases in our life that we see, where, again, I'll focus on my thread will be on digitization and what it can help you achieve. Today, you go to any of the large marketplaces and buy a mobile phone, you can instantaneously buy an insurance for that phone. Right? It comes as an alternate offer to you. And the third, you can immediately get it into an EMI mode. Right? You don't have to buy it as a full cost. You can put it in equated monthly installments and buy it. Right? All three things have been able to converge simply because of digitization. Right? And then it creates a value. When you're buying a mobile phone for 50,000, who hasn't dropped a phone in our lives? I mean, all of us have dropped it. And there's an insurance product for just about 700, 800 rupees, or even less than 1,000. You're really motivated to pick it up, right? And by the way, if you look at it, it's not one of the established, or not, I shouldn't say established, the big insurance brand names there. It's a couple of newcomers who are offering some of these products, right? And bringing insurance that close to you while you're at the point of purchase, and then making financing available to you, and you don't have to do anything. You just click. You still click and you become the buy the product, and all three things come to you. Earlier, you had to buy the mobile phone. Maybe if it's a smaller store, he won't be able to give you financing, and then of course insurance is completely different. So I think when you digitize and when you deal with the ecosystem and you build ecosystem partnerships, which is one of the fundamental facets of digitization, you start enabling a product suite which probably didn't exist, or it's a better way to deliver your products. I think that's something that large companies need to tailor in, because here comes somebody new, offers a product and takes away the market. And let me tell you, if you in general insurance, if you give up the number of mobile phones that are sold in India, that's a huge market. It may not be, one mobile phone may equal, or a small car may equal 10 mobile phones, but 10 mobile phones sell in an instant. in online marketplaces, right? So it's a huge market, and you have to start looking at some of those opportunities available through digitization, right? And that's something that I think all companies have to take note of. So it's not necessary, and I will not preach to the experts here as to whether they should discount or not. But certainly, my experience as a buyer, I do buy when there's a sales, no two ways about it. All of us do. But reality is, if there's a better way to get your product across through digitization, then that's something that you should look at very seriously and explore. I'll give you another example of digitization which can help revenue leakage. When it comes to, I just, day before yesterday, I renewed my AMC contract for my air conditioner, right? And, the person said the contract is directly with the company, but sir, you have to give me a check. I actually had to start looking for my check. And I found it, and I found that the last check I issued was somewhere in early 2019. Since then, I've not used checks at all, right? And that is something that if they're able to digitize, then you can prevent revenue leakage, because a lot of us do a lot of AMC contracts for our household appliances with local players who probably are not backed by the OEMs. But the reality is that the OEMs are losing that revenue, right? And that is something that OEMs can look at digitizing, as I said, all customer channels, where you keep in touch with the customer directly. You own the customer and you own the customer revenue. So it prevents revenue leakage. Customer is very confident because now you're dealing with the OEM directly, right? And you're not dealing with somebody in between where you're not very sure. And typically we have maintenance contracts for our water purifiers, for our air conditioners, a lot of these large appliances, we do have maintenance contract where we pay year after year. So another aspect that will help business is, again, digitization, right? And that's something that I'll harp on, so that with the use cases that I mentioned, you can understand what it does to your bottom line and to your top line.
Rishi, you have to add anything on the question that I posed before, as in whether we are looking at margins, improving margins, or customer safety. How are we going about it?
Okay, I think one thing is very clear from what all of us have discussed is nobody's clear what's going to happen going forward, right? While prices are holding on, there could be pressure on prices, and therefore there could be that could lead to drop in the margins that you can charge to the consumers. Second is, while we would like to reduce the end of season discount and sell more on fresh, but if you realize that the overall number of customers have shrunk in the market, then brands would start to become more affordable so that they can attract consumers from the lower, the aspiring segment to really come and buy the brand. So all of those things are going to happen, likely to happen. And I think what COVID has taught us, that we are all keeping our ears close to the ground. We are looking at trends. We are trying to figure out what's different this week than previous week. And therefore, that is something that will continue for all of us. Now, what can help us as we move forward in this whole discovery phase? I think two things. What COVID has taught us, and it has humbled, it's really humbled me as to how the whole ecosystem came together to help each other, right? So COVID was a time where you were stuck with contracts with each other. And if everybody had demanded that you go buy the contracts, you would have had to, you were really staring at a very, very difficult situation. But there you saw that as consumers were not buying, retailers took some of the hit, the malls took some of the hit, the brands took some of the hit. And therefore, net, what happened is that the entire ecosystem came together and said, okay, we are partners, right? We are all vulnerable. We are all suffering. There's nobody who's like better off than the other. Let's share it all. Whereas in a normal situation, when things are going on very well, you typically see that one partner in the chain is better off than the other. He has more negotiating power than the other. And therefore, you always have this whole trust, mistrust, this whole 5%, my business versus your business keeps going on. But I think what COVID has taught us, that it has shown that all of us are vulnerable. We have all come forward and helped each other. And I think in that spirit, if the whole value chain actually keeps working together to figure out which parts of the whole equation does not add up, right? It would really help us save cost in the industry. For example, good factories would demand that you give orders 6 months in advance, and therefore brands would go and take orders 6 months in advance, and therefore the cycle went on like that. now if the value chain becomes much more efficient because you're ordering closer to deliveries and factories are also tuning their factories in such a way, net it brings down the whole cost in the value chain. And I think that, and like Adib talked about, principles abroad, not understanding the value of local production and saving all the costs that come with ordering so much in advance, paying import duties, etc. Now with COVID, people are realizing that a lot of these costs are sitting in the system. We need to get rid of these costs. And the more kitty we have of these costs, the more we will be able to tune ourselves in case we need to have more offers, more value propositions like free EMIs for large purchase, more discounts. So all of those, or smaller stores versus more larger stores so that customers have more social distancing. I think a lot of those things are still uncertain, but all the organizations should be working on making their core proposition stronger, their value chains much more efficient, their partnerships much more open and much more collaborative. I think that will make us execute all the things that consumers want us to do. If we do not learn from this, the consumers will demand something and we will not have the capability of offering that because of our mindset or because of our margin structures or because of our principles. And that would lead to, faster degrowth and, of the businesses. So that's what I want to say on this.
Sure. I was just thinking that I don't think it is an either or answer that is there in front of us. Because as retail businesses, what is paramount to us is customer experience, right? If safety is offering customer experience, we have to offer the right levels of safety in the physical formats. If it is some other investment that is needed, we have to make those investments. And I don't think we have the option to charge it back to the customer in that sense. What we really need to look at is more go with a continuous improvement mindset and look at what are those opportunities within our value chain where we can actually optimize costs. Because at the end of the day, as retail businesses, the only way we can survive is by driving profitable growth, right? It cannot be just growth for the sake of growth without profitability. You are either a retailer who's already in the green, and so we are trying to build on that success, or you are a retailer who is in the direction to get to green, and then we have to work towards it, right? So in that context, I would say that it's very important for us to continue to prioritize customer experience and make the right investments there. Making customer experience better can never be a wrong investment, right? But we continuously need to work on how do we get our businesses towards profitable growth. And that, I think, is the mantra for success in this space.
We are nearing the end of our discussion. We have already shot 1 hour time deadline, but I'll just ask one question to all the other panelists. Key learnings, like Rishi said, that customers are paramount importance. We have to do whatever we need to do, and a lot of collaboration that is happening in the industry is something that retailers have learned. But just to understand quickly, one key learning that you all got from this pandemic situation. Anyone can lead this discussion.
Varun, if I can maybe give two words on this from our point of view. Long-term planning cycles are out of the window. The shorter, the brisker, the quicker is better. And we all in our organizations talk about being nimble. We talk about innovation. This is the time to live it. In the sense that we talk about cultures of innovation. The fact is, as a leader, this is a time to encourage teams to go out and make mistakes, do things, but do more things and multiple approaches than one. I mean, I think the key learning for us is one strategy will work for all is out of the window. If there has to be strategy for a store, a market, a region, a team, go out and implement. I think that'll be my keyword.
So
Rishi?
I'll go.
Yeah, Ramesh.
No, go ahead, Rishi, if you want to.
No. Any one of you can take.
All right. So I do believe that in adversity, there is an opportunity. It's not a cliche anymore. I think, we just have to make sure that we rethink our entire portfolio. And we've done that as a company ourselves as Ingenico e-Payments, because we see, the flight to online, which we discussed about, the fact that hygiene transparency is so important and consumers are not just willing to step out and buy things. They'd rather sit at home and buy stuff. So, I think we have to continuously, as I said, look at improving the customer experience through the payment cycle, because payments is not about sitting at your desk with a strong internet connection. People do it from our mobile phones. And at any point, the link can snap because you're moving or you're in a car or you're walking. And so we still have to give a very good payment experience to our users. So that's something that all of the panelists have spoken about, whether it be customer experience at the store or customer experience on the mobile. When you make the payment, it's important that when you check out and you pay, it's a smooth experience. It is safe and it's secure, right? And as I said, you look at digitizing your customer channels, your supply chains, and how do you adopt newer technologies like AI and automation? They're not newer anymore, but to continuously improve and look at new products. So one of the things that we saw as I said, as an opportunity is with the geopolitical tensions that we know of at our borders, is some of our customers may want to go global. So what we have worked on and we are enabling is cross-border payments. So people overseas can buy from Indian suppliers, again, using the online medium. So that's something that we've been wanting to do, but the COVID pandemic has only helped us put more resources into a cross-border payment solution. And soon we'll be able to offer cross-border payments in the next couple of months to Indian, entrepreneurs who are wanting to sell outside. So as I see it, it's constantly innovating, understanding the customer, improving the customer experience, and looking at new opportunities are something that we as a company will continue to do going forward.
For us at Tables, we've always kept customer experience as authentic as possible. And, so we've always trying to do that by focusing on digital innovations and rightly placing communication to bridge the gap between what is being offered to our consumers and what we want to relay. I think so more than ever, we feel that, feedbacks and ratings are very important for a retailer like us to listen to. As the industry is serving a generation of a digitally savvy consumer base, who I believe is just entering into the time of spending. So I think so it's very important that we understand this new breed of customers who are just going to be evolved, who's going to come into the spending market. And I think so we should, as retailers, must be geared to address their needs and how they would be behaving very differently to a pack of consumers who we were used to dealing with in the past.
To add to this, Varun, see, fundamentals of the business is all about, the customer. You understand the needs and you have sort of, gear your value chain to deliver those needs. I think that fundamental will not change. I think what will change is actually the time frame, of doing this. If you had taken probably X amount of time, now you have to do it in fraction of X. That is number one. And I think the resistance to change, which used to be pretty common under normal circumstances, I think no longer, any company can survive with the resistance to change. So you have to continuously watch the customers, and all the holy cows of the past are changing. So you have to adopt it pretty quickly without too much of time. And you cannot have a situation where there is a huge resistance to change. You have to change very fast, adopt, move on, and then find something new and then move on with that. So that's I think is a big learning during this time.
I think businesses which have had a very strong core and a very strong customer connect, I think they are better off than businesses who have been kind of trying to reach that core and trying to figure out their right connect between their business model and the consumer. I think they're much better off. But the paradox here is that you have reached a very strong core because you have done something in a certain way over a very long period of time and therefore have built consistency. However, the consumer has now decided because of pandemic to change very quickly. So these businesses which have built a strong core with a very strong discipline on a certain way of doing businesses have now to turn their attention on to really realize or understand what's the fast changing need of the consumer and be able to change accordingly. I think that's the need of the hour. So what has got you here will not get you past the next stage in case you are not able to adopt. So I think really the challenge and one big learning is to really keep your ears to the ground, really look at how consumers is moving and change the culture in the organization to be much more flexible, much more fluid, much more innovative, much more fail fast, while maintaining the core of the business. I think that's the challenge going forward. And as we navigate this and as we all learn from each other, I think we'll do well in that journey.
Kavita, will take your response before we close the discussion.
Sure. So I think I would like to highlight on 3 things that has been a big learning for us. At the outset, the mindset, what I call as the growth mindset, to be able to constantly learn, right? The crisis has been unprecedented. Some of the most proven ideas have been challenged, but it has also presented a whole new set of ideas, a whole new set of opportunities that we never thought of in the past, right? Which also means that there is a need for us to take a very strategic perspective. This is the opportunity for us maybe to scout for new ideas while we build on the successes, exploit the ideas that have worked well. It's also been very important to search wide and look for new opportunities that we could leverage. And then as retail businesses, one of the most important learnings for us is also the fact that our co-workers who are in the forefront, meeting our customers day in and day out, they are at the center of everything that has happened in the retail space, right? It is the moment of truth. And the question then is, if you're looking for those really good ideas that can make a difference to customer experience, they often come from your coworkers in the front line. So the question is, how do we promote entrepreneurship at that level and create an organization that is also resilient for future crises? That is something I think we should all take back as a learning, even much into the future than, the current and the present today.
So thank you very much. With this, we come to an end of this very insightful panel discussion. So I would like to thank all the panelists who made this session a very fruitful one. And I would like to thank all the audience to be very patient listener. And please shoot on your questions to our panelists, and they'll get back to you. And stay tuned for more such sessions. Thank you.